Cognitive psychology surrounds everything we do in our normal lives. Perception, attention, immediate memory, object recognition, long-term memory, memory distortions, autobiographical memory, language, decision-making, and problem-solving are all mental processes that cognitive psychologists study. Language is a cognitive process in which we process information to form meaning and understanding. Speech, reading, and language are all processes that take in stimuli to form words, writing, and meaning. In this video, we will break down reading and word recognition, beginning with how it is taught and leading into reading disabilities. Before we talk about reading and word recognition, let's go back to the beginning and talk about how we learn to read. In this journal by John Pekulski, teachers responded to a national report that asked the question, is reading best taught as a separate subject? Reading is one aspect of the communication process, and the skills from reading bleed into all other content skills. If language is not correct, then what is said is not meant. The importance of language traces back to knowing how to read. The National Report of the United States for the International Educational Achievement Project indicated that teachers who did not incorporate reading instructions into English instructions and instead taught it as a separate subject reported higher scoring students. Data from the report supported the conclusion that in order to improve reading comprehension, separated instruction is preferred in the lower grades. One of the teachers, Doris L. Pertz, responded in agreement and stated that majority of time teaching children should be spent in reading instruction. This is in order to create a better understanding of reading. Besner, Stolz, and Boudelaire wrote about automatic behaviors and broke down what the Stroop effect means. Automatic behaviors, which are those in which a stimulus elicits behavior without intention, are most commonly known as reflexes like blinking. It is also argued that reading is a learned automatic behavior. The Stroop effect is a phenomenon in which we are slower identifying the color of a word if it is in a different color. For example, the word green is written in a yellow font. Many psychologists have studied and explored the Stroop effect over the last 70 years. Reading the word is automatic, which prevents readers from reading the word instead of saying the color. Reading is difficult to inhibit and interferes with the processing of other information about the word. The Stroop effect demonstrates the name and the meaning of a word being processed by skilled readers even when they are trying their hardest not to process them. In this article, an experiment was conducted to study how the participants identify the color presented. Some words had only one letter colored and other words had every letter colored. The results from 64 participants showed that the single colored letter produced a smaller Stroop effect than the words that had all of the letters colored. Because this showed a smaller Stroop effect, it suggests that the automatic reading hypothesis stated is too strong. Cognitive and linguistic deficits associated with dyslexia that are present in children and adults are studied in this journal by Giorgio and Das. In a mixed study that used university students with reading problems, showed that the two students had different issues. JW had deficits in vocabulary, while LG had difficulties in phonological processing, rapid naming, and successive processing. In addition, JW had trouble seeing links among patterns, which is a simultaneous process. LG had trouble remembering directions or a long list of words, which are successive processing. These diverging results suggest that the roots of reading disabilities are tied to fundamental information processing skills like successive and simultaneous processing. Reading difficulties and linguistic deficiencies among older individuals is rooted in the processing of words, which provide a cognitive framework. Next, let's talk about predictors in reading disorders and the emotional effects. Snelling and Home wrote this article and began with explaining that their goal is to review the findings from studies that will lead to the discussion of risk factors and how they relate to reading problems. The authors conclude with their common thing among interpreting several studies, which was that oral language skills provide the foundation for literacy development. The method of which these conclusions were made were through the examination of various studies. These studies ranged from learning to read, risk factors for poor reading, comorbidities of reading disorders, and outcomes of reading disorders. Many negative risk factors result from reading disabilities. Those include behavioral problems, emotional deficits, negative educational outcomes, an increased risk of depressed moods, and low self-esteem. Friesen, Ward, Bonnet, Cormier, and Jared all did a study that used 85 bilinguals who read English sentences to track their eye movements. The differences in fixation durations between homophone errors and spelling control errors provided evidence for cross-language activation that extended to semantic representations.